Hey guys, this is Reinhardt and today I'll be talking about Unholy. Unholy sub-specs, Unholy main spec, and Unholy Glyphs. So let's get started. First of all, I wanted to tell you about there are two types of spec for Unholy that most of the DKs go. One is with a very disease heavy damage, another one with disease light damage, high debuff duration, and on top of that a little bit more sustained damage. Two specs work perfectly the same. I'll be talking about which spec is more fitted for a specific comms and why. So let's get started. First, I'm gonna go with a disease heavy damage spec. You put 3 points in the vulnerance, then you put pretty much the rest like you normally would. Yes, you're skipping resilient infection because it's not worth, because we have Unholy Blight, and in this expansion healers actually do not dispel your diseases most of the time. And then you go into Frost for Lichborn and Endless Winter, and 1 point in Sudden Tomb. This is disease heavy damage. It is very good for Shadow Cleave or DK Shadow Priest. It's even pretty decent for a DK Feral Comm because there's a lot of that damage. For people who like extra damage instead of extra utility, they can spec out of the Frost and spec more into Blood for 1 minute Strangulate and Scent of Blood. Scent of Blood is absolutely amazing, and the reason why is because you have 15% chance after taking damage to have a proc that will give you 10 runic power on your next melee attack. First of all, we have a Death Advance, meaning our uptime on the target will be a lot higher than Frost Death Knights, and usually Unholy Death Knights are very starved in terms of the runic power, so Scent of Blood helps us a lot there. Okay, so that's about the blood sub spec, and this is disease heavy damage spec. Now let's talk about Unholy disease duration slash a bit more extra damage. You put 2 points in Unholy Command, 3 points in Epidemic instead of Vulnerance for your disease duration, and then you pick pretty much the same thing. So here basically instead of putting 2 points in Emblem Plaguebringer, you're gonna put 1. The reason why there's only 1 point that needs to be taken in there is because you're gonna get the same debuff, 8% increased magical damage. So you're pretty much covered. And because you don't go into disease heavy damage, you have increased disease duration and 2 points in Sudden Doom. Extra proc is always nice. And then you sub-spec in Frost, just like you normally would, or into sub-spec into Blood. The last one that I want to talk to you about is actually a Necrotic Heavy spec, and I'm personally not a big fan of it because I like putting those curse strikes into my rotation, but here it is. You put 2 points in Unholy Command, 3 points in Epidemic, you put everything here, but you're skipping Rage and Riven there because you're not going to be curse striking. Here you put a 31 talent points, so you're gonna have a bit extra talent points to do whatever you want to, and that's basically this. You have extra attack power here. Your necrotics will absorb more healing, and you are gonna have an increased disease duration. If you want to go for disease damage, I would not advise you so, but you can always do that. And to do that, you can just put 1 into Emblem Plaguebringer, take F1 in Sudden Tomb, and instead of Epidemic, take Vulnerance. The reason why I'm not a big fan of it is because if we have a uptime on a target, let's say a target is at 30% HP, and your other teammate is controlling the healer, you need to kill that target, so you'll need to probably Curse Strike instead of Necrotic Strike. That's where this spec is a disadvantage, but for providing overall pressure, this spec is actually in a bit of advantage over the previous one I showed you. Another thing is, a lot of people asking me, when are you supposed to Necrotic Strike, when are you supposed to Curse Strike? And my basic philosophy is, If your Scourge Strike does more damage than Necrotic Strike with Absorption combined, it's a lot worse using your Scourge Strike. On the Resto Druid, out of the Resto form, they're cutting us really heavy. So what we need to do is we need to rack up a lot of damage instead of applying those necrotic stacks, because they can just root us via Nature Grasp or just cut us into oblivion. So what we need to do here is to actually Scourge Strike. Rogues take a lot of damage from our Scourge Strikes. So are mages. Logs to some point, but I usually like to apply necrotics on the warlocks, simply put because even though they are closest, even though Scourge Strike will do good damage, we still need that casting debuff on the warlocks. As we know, the haste affects dots and the way they tick. Sorry, that was my cell phone. So basically, if you apply necrotics on a warlock and he's gonna apply dots, those dots will tick 30% less often. Sorry for my English. They'll tick 30% slower. So basically what I mean by that is, so instead of them getting 5 ticks per, let's say, 12 seconds, they're only gonna get 3 ticks. So necrotics are very useful on the dot classes. They're also very useful on the rest of druids, because their hearts are gonna be ticking a lot slower. But that's basically it. On the warriors, paladins, most time hunters, you have to use necrotics, because that's when the Scourge Strike does a lot less damage, and that's when the healing absorption comes into very handy. Last thing I want to talk to you about is mages. And for mages or against mages, what you guys need to do is to actually Scourge Strike more, because they can kite you, but you need to rack up that damage. Especially if they don't have a mage armor, just Scourge Strike them down to the ground. That's about it for my spec. Now let's look at the glyphs. For the glyph, I have Death Coil, because that's main hour damage rotation. Because I like Scourge Strike Heavy spec, I'm also picking increased Scourge Strike damage. For people who like disease heavy damage without Rage of Riven there, they usually go with the Icy Touch for extra disease damage. For people who don't like a disease damage and do not like Scourge Strike, then they usually go with either Rune Strike and Death and Decay. You guys understand what you're gonna think here. What the hell? Why they're going to Rune Strike? And the reason why is because when you switch to Blood Presence, you can basically do a lot of Rune Strikes. They cost relatively lower mana than your Death Coil. They cost 4 runic power less. And the main thing is they do actually more damage than your Death Coils do. And they proc your runic empowerment as well. So going Blood Presence and spamming Rune Strikes is actually pretty viable. Another thing is, we don't have our Death Strikes anymore, so we're gonna have to stance pretty frequently. So what I mean by that is, this increased 10% Rune Strike critical is actually will be pretty viable there. And then I have a Glyph of Raise of Death. Then for my major glyphs, I have AMS, Increased Death Grip, Strangulate. For my minor, I have Glyph of Death's Embrace instead of the Glyph of Blood Tap. I don't even have it learned. And the reason why I like Death's Embrace here more is because when our pet takes damage, we can Death Coil it, and our Death Coil is gonna cost only 14 runic power. We can build up a lot of Shadow Infusion stacks, and we can enrage our pet quickly. Death's Embrace is a must for Unholy Decay, in my opinion. Thank you guys for watching my video. Please forgive me for some and ahs. I'm doing this a long stream without interrupting. Have fun guys, and let me know if you have other questions about Unholy Death Knights. Please.